Hello adventurers, it is that time again where we are presented with a brand new class. And that new class is called Tempest, as we all know, and recently Blizzard invited the partners and myself out to their headquarters in Southern California to playtest and provide feedback of the upcoming change. Just a quick disclaimer and reminder that this playtest build is an early release, and what you see in the gameplay and the footage may or may not make it to live. Starting off, we have the customization screen where we can select the various presets. We can take a look at gear previews and we can customize our character to our liking. Make sure you use the chapters at the bottom to skip the character customization and this next minute or so of me customizing my character. You can skip all that, just use the chapters below. I think I like the last one the best, so let's customize this character a bit to my liking. Now that the character customization is finished, we can remove our gears so we can look at the skills without any of the essences modifying what the visual effects look like. First up, we have a passive skill called Mist Touch, in which attacks will periodically spawn a Zephyr, and when they despawn, they will drop an orb. This kind of reminds me like a Mistweaver Monk in World of Warcraft, and I'm very keen on seeing how this is going to play out. Our first primary attack is called Wave Edge. This does a sweeping attack, dealing primary damage to a target and 25% of that damage to nearby enemies. During some of the action sequences that follows, you'll see that it pixelates and some of the frames look pretty bad. I'm unsure what the bitrate was during recording, but since we weren't allowed to touch the settings, I don't think it was optimized for high definition recording, so apologies in advance. Next up, we have Wind Edge. This one does not do AoE damage to nearby targets, but if the target is not in melee range, you will teleport or dash to that target and makes it pretty powerful to use. Next up, we have Blade Dance. This skill throws your blades into the ground, dealing damage and pulls you forward. Breaker is the next ability. It is basically a wave that crashes on your enemy. Next is Cascade. You and your Zephyrs slam your edges into the ground, dealing damage. Crosswinds is next. You and your Zephyrs unleash a gust of wind. Next, we have Flowing Strike. It conjures a Zephyr and you dash forward while dealing damage. Fog Step is next. It creates an area of wind that prevents you from being picked out, increasing your attack speed and making you immune. Tide is next. It pulls in enemies, dealing damage and stuns them for 2 seconds. This is a pretty long cooldown, but in PvP I think it'll be pretty useful. Next is Rolling Surf. This is basically like the Red Surfer ability from the Blood Knight. It's just now in water form, if you will, so axis surfing. And allows you to attack while moving. Squall is next. You and your Zephyrs teleport to a target location, dealing damage. I think this will be pretty useful as an iframe in PvP especially. Next, we have our damage buff called Storm Fury. Imbues our weapons. Primary attacks unleash slashes of wind, dealing 40% extra damage. We have Tidal Rush. You and a target Zephyr dash at each other's current location, dealing damage through the wake. And I have to go get a Zephyr and show you kind of what this looks like. Vortex is next. Conjure a Vortex that pulls in nearby enemies and deals damage over time. And lastly, we have Zephyr Surge. Dissipate into the air, becoming untargetable and unleashing a flurry of 5 slashes on nearby enemies. Now let's take a look at the essences available for the Tempest. There are a lot of cascade essences in here. Unmoored Eyes looks pretty interesting because of a stun and a gap closer in PvP. Looks pretty interesting. Let's take a look at the chest essences. Taking a look now at the shoulder essences. This one looks interesting for PvP, but there's probably a better one. There is a better one called Gus Gift that I think is more valuable in PvP. Taking a look at the pants now, let's see what we have here. I think Galebreaker is going to be, or Flaring Lighthouse, the original essence, is probably the best choice here if you're going to use Breaker as a skill. Taking a look at the main hand essences now. And lastly, we have the offhand essences. Finally, we get into the biggest change of the game besides the new class, and that is the redesigned Paragon trees. This is a lot simpler to use, and that's one of the biggest complaints is min-maxing the armor pen, potency, resistance, the damage and life nodes. That's basically all taken out, and every point that you spend automatically gives you basically 10 points in each, or 80 damage and 800 life for every 4 points spent. So it's very simple now to use the Paragon trees. Pretty much all you're choosing are the active skills on the left hand side of the screen, and that's about it. Taking a look at the redesigned gladiator tree here. Choosing our active skills is pretty easy. We just select which one we want to use, click activate, and then click on one of the empty circles on the left hand side. There are some pretty nice skills here in the new gladiator tree. I really like them. And for me, this is what my PvP tree is going to look like. Taking a look at grind expedition tree really quick. This is more PvE focused, and I would say more raid focused. They've combined a lot of the trees into one, it looks like. Invincibility tree is next. This also looks like a combination of two other trees that we're very familiar with. Strand Mastery looks a lot like the Weaver tree. And a lot of things didn't work, like we couldn't really select the last active or bonus skill slot. We later found out that only one of the trees was working, the wind movement tree, as you'll see here in a little bit. Finally, wind movement was the last tree that was unlocked for us. So let's take a look at this tree. Finally, here we're able to slot our bonus skill. And later you'll see that you're able to basically slot any skill in that last slot from any of the trees. I like these new Paragon trees because it offers a lot of variation on the bonus skill especially, or your special skill especially. There's going to be a lot of diversity and build variation now, which I think is really refreshing for the game. Here I'm taking my time because I'm writing down skills of what I think is going to be useful, especially for PvP and PvE in the bonus skill slot. So I'm just taking notes and just trying to figure out what's going to work the best. And taking a look at an initial PvP build, here's what I think may or may not work the best. Apologies for all the splices and the edits here. I had to skip around to find the essences that I ended up using at the very end of the video. I didn't actually have a cohesive build. It's things I've changed out as I was playing throughout the playtest. So apologies for the edits here. Skills that I'm using here is Wind Edge, Cascade, Breaker, Fog Step, and Blade Dance. However, I think after reviewing this footage, I may change on live what I think I would want to use, because Cascade breaks on the first damage done. Yes, it does CC and buff the next attack, but I think there are some other abilities that might be worth more for burst damage, especially since it feels like Blizzard really wants us to use the Zephyrs. So having 100% uptime on Zephyrs allows you to pop Squall and Zephyr Surge for a lot of burst damage during your CC window. I'll probably still keep Blade Dance for the stun, and then once I have 3 Zephyrs up, I can pop Squall for the iframe dash, as well as Zephyr Surge once I'm on top to make me untargetable, and then use the maybe Squall again on top, and then Blade Dance to stun again. It's a lot all together, but I think there's a ton of burst potential that's available on this class. And unfortunately, I didn't get to play test that part, but after I thought about it and looked at some of this footage, I think that build is going to be crazy strong for burst damage. In this duel, I'm really abusing Fog Step's immunity, the primary attack, to beat Ezereth here. He gets my cheat death here. I'm trying not to die. He gets another Dust Prowler shield. He was so lucky to roll a Dust Prowler when he summoned a familiar. I drop Fog Step again. You can see how he's getting all those misses. He gets my Phoenix. And I luckily win. After playtesting for about 3 hours, I came to the realization that this class has a lot of burst and mobility potential, and it needs it because it is not a melee character, so it doesn't get the 40% damage reduction that the Blood Knight did. So you're very squishy, and it shows during some of the encounters that I did that you take a lot of damage compared to a melee class, because it's not a melee class. So with mobility, I think you're going to want as much mobility as possible, and you want to be able to do as much damage during your CC window as possible. So that's what I was saying earlier, that I think Squall Zephyr Surge, getting in and out, and then using maybe Blade Dance for the stun after you do your Squall to blink in. So it's a Squall as an iframe dash. You and your Zephyrs teleport on top of the target. Use your Blade Dance to stun. Use your Zephyr Surge to be untargetable, and then use your Blade Dance again, and then use your Squall again to try and burst them down in that 2 to 4 second stun window that you have. I think that's really what you're going to need to do in order to maximize damage output, because if any melee gets on top of you, you're going to die. So we'll see how it goes and see how the meta plays out. Very curious to see what everyone's going to do with new class, how it's going to affect the fold. Let's be real, Necromancer's probably still going to be the dominator in PvP. They always are, I swear. Blizzard devs, and we were joking about it during the on-site that Blizzard only plays Necros. So, and we'll see if Necros still reigns supreme. But I don't think this Necros are going to be dethroned by this class. We'll see. The class feels very much like a monk, but like a Mistweaver monk from World of Warcraft. It's just a very weird type of class. It just feels very strange. Not in a bad way, but it's just still super early to tell kind of how it's going to play out. So we'll see what happens. And in order to save some time on this video, I'm just going to speed up the gauntlet fight. You don't want to watch us beat on this boss for the next couple of minutes, because it takes quite a bit of time for us to clear this. This video is already super long. I didn't go into detail on PvE builds or other things that some of the other content creators will cover more than likely. I try to keep it strictly to builds and mostly surrounding PvP, because that's what kind of content that I produce. So make sure that you check out all the other creators. I'm sure they're going to go into more detail than I will on some of the topics. I'll be sure to link their channels down below in the description. Check them out if you're interested. And we were joking about this during the on-side. Tony was the only one that had more of a PvE build on, so his damage numbers don't count. Should have like reforged my gear and, you know, did all that nonsense just to min-max so I could be on top here. And in closing, I just want to say I greatly appreciate all the likes, comments, and subscribes that I get. I know I haven't been producing a lot of content lately. I've been super busy with work and in real life stuff, but I do promise to come back and make some more videos. So in the meantime, hope everyone stays safe and stays alive, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.